I know what to do, but I just can't do it in the moment. Man, have you ever heard an executive say this during a coaching session? Or, let's be real, maybe you've even felt that exact same frustration yourself. It's literally the classic leadership paradox. You've got a highly intelligent, super capable professional who knows exactly what the optimal response should be, yet, bam, under pressure, they do the exact opposite. They freeze up, they lash out, or they start micromanaging everything. It's a totally universal frustration, and bridging that gap, well, that is exactly what we're going to master today. Welcome to this explainer. I am so incredibly thrilled to be your guide today as we peel back the layers and explore the hidden psychological depths of corporate leadership. Now, think of today's explainer as a powerful little taster for the Schema Coaching Academy's certification training program. We're going to completely rethink how we approach executive development. We're looking way past standard behavioral advice and diving straight into the unconscious patterns that actually drive our leaders when the stakes are at their highest. Okay, let's dive right into our roadmap. First, we'll hit the leadership knowing-doing gap. Then we'll contrast traditional versus schema coaching. From there, we're going to explore why the workplace acts as a corporate schema amplifier, break down the anatomy of a cascade, equip you with the schema coaching toolkit, and finally define our ultimate goal, leading from the benevolent adult. All right, Section 1, the leadership knowing-doing gap. Let's look at what happens when knowledge just totally collapses. The honest truth is, the executives you coach rarely lack actual leadership knowledge. I mean, they've read all the books, they've got the 360-degree feedback, and they're armed with literally every MBA framework imaginable. The advice is everywhere, and frankly, they already know the right move. But under intense corporate stress, that knowledge simply collapses. Deadlines, board scrutiny, sudden conflict. In these high-pressure moments, an underlying schema or coping mode just grabs the wheel. And as schema coaches, that critical split-second inner moment is our territory. We work right in that gap between the leader they intend to be and the activated leader who actually shows up in the boardroom. Moving on to Section 2, traditional versus schema coaching. And honestly, this is a true paradigm shift. So traditional executive coaching usually looks at a problem and asks, okay, what competency is missing here? What behavior or skill should they build to fix this? It's very surface level, right? Schema coaching, on the other hand, pivots entirely. We ask, what does this situation activate inside the executive? Which early unmet need is being touched right now? Which schema is coloring their whole interpretation of this event? We're targeting the absolute root cause of the behavior rather than just piling on more behavioral skills that are inevitably going to collapse under pressure all over again. And this, right here, is exactly where you, as a coach, offer truly transformative value. And I absolutely love this empathetic reframe. Quote, we do not frame executives as deficient, we frame them as activated. This is a massive, massive selling point for the schema coaching approach. Think about it. When an executive is dominating a meeting or heavily micromanaging a team, it's not because they're a bad leader who lacks skills. It's an unconscious attempt to manage a terrifying internal state. Dominating? That's just an attempt to regain control. Micromanaging? Just an attempt to prevent a feared failure. Truly understanding this changes the entire dynamic of the coaching room. Okay, Section 3, the corporate schema amplifier. Let's talk about why the workplace triggers us so much. Let me ask you this. Why does the corporate environment so reliably bring these intense coping modes out? Like, why do schemas that sleep perfectly fine at home suddenly fire off at 9 a.m. on a Monday morning in the office? Well, the workplace is essentially a massive amplifier for our dormant schemas, and it's driven by 6 main factors. First, you have constant evaluation, keeping your worth constantly on trial. Second, authority and hierarchy reactivate old family of origin roles. Third, high visibility and public exposure trigger shame. Fourth, chronic overload just destroys our capacity to reflect. Fifth, we so often fuse our self-worth entirely with our job titles. And sixth, perhaps most dangerously, the reward system often literally pays the schema. The workaholic gets promoted, which just reinforces the damaging pattern. Corporate life flawlessly recreates our earliest dynamics of approval, belonging, and authority. And this brilliantly illustrates what the Academy calls the mirror effect. Basically, a corporate moment unconsciously evokes an early relational template. A demanding boss suddenly feels exactly like a demanding parent, or a disengaged team triggers the exact same feelings as an unsafe home. It's one schema just showing up on multiple corporate surfaces. The trigger always lives right there, in that exact spot where a modern workplace demand meets an old, deep-seated psychological template. All right, moving to Section 4, Anatomy of a Cascade. Let's map out this spiral. This structural map reveals how a single event builds into a very predictable cycle that we call the executive mode cascade. And mapping this out is incredibly empowering for leaders. So step 1 is the trigger. Let's say a public challenge in a high-stakes meeting. Step 2 is the schema meaning, instantly thinking I'm going to be exposed as a fraud. Step 3 activates the vulnerable child, feeling really small and afraid. Step 4 is the coping mode kicking in. Maybe they overcompensate by totally dominating the room. And finally, step 5 is the ultimate business impact, creating bottlenecks or leaving a team too afraid to speak up. The real beauty of the Schema Coaching Academy's approach is that mapping this spiral doesn't excuse the bad behavior. Rather, it proves that the behavior is entirely interruptible.
Which brings us to Section 5, the Schema Coaching Toolkit. Time to equip the coach.
So the crucial point here is, how do we actually intervene in this cycle? How do we equip you, the coach, to break this cascade? Well, this table teases the sheer depth of formulation you'll master in the full training program. We can directly link what the executive complains about, the presenting pattern, to their underlying driving schemas and modes. If they present with perfectionism, they're likely driven by unrelenting standards, slipping into an overcompensator mode, which costs the business in bottlenecks. Imposter syndrome? That's usually tied to defectiveness schemas and a detached protector mode, leading to massive overpreparation. Burnout usually stems from a self-sacrifice schema. Let me tell you, when you can clearly map these out for a client, it is a total, massive light bulb moment for them. Once we have that map, we use tools like the Executive Schema Flashcard. This is a brilliant, highly practical cognitive tool that you'll use to help leaders map a specific workplace trigger directly to its schema meaning and coping mode, and then script out a brand new, benevolent adult response. It gives the leader a really tangible anchor. In that split-second gap, they use the flashcard to just pause, step out of their triggered mode, and consciously choose a firm, fair, and calm response.
Finally, Section 6, leading the benevolent adult. This is the ultimate goal.
What are we actually striving for with our clients? Let's be very clear about this. The goal is absolutely not a flawless leader. We're not trying to eliminate all activation or create some robotic, error-free record. In fact, good enough is our core anti-perfectionism frame. Seriously, if your coachee leaves your sessions with just a new, shiny checklist of leadership standards to prove themselves against, we have completely failed them. We've just fed their unrelenting standard schema. The true goal is to help them notice their activation earlier, recover from it much faster, and lead from that grounded, wise, benevolent adult state way more often. I want to leave you with this really profound thought from the Academy's material. The gift of schema coaching in executive work is not that we make leaders perfect. It is that we help them become more conscious at precisely the moment where an old pattern would otherwise lead through them. It just completely shifts how you foster growth. So, I'll leave you with a bit of a provocative question to chew on. Are you currently just treating the surface symptoms of your clients with standard skills training, or are you ready to dig in and address the very roots of their leadership cascades? If you want to facilitate deeper, truly lasting transformation, the full Schema Coaching Academy training is exactly where you need to be. Thank you so much for watching this explainer, and keep exploring.